Dr. White, we're here to talk about public opinion on the president, public opinion on Mitt Romney, and this Wednesday we're going to have a little debate, the first of three,
Right.
and the vice presidential debate as well. Now, over the past 4 years, we've seen little change in the economy, a great deal of unrest in the Middle East, and uncertainty with reference to the future of Medicare. Now, 60% believe that the country is going in the wrong direction. Nevertheless, President Obama still leads in many of the swing states that could decide the election. What do you attribute to this?
Well, I think, first of all, the swing states are the states that have been most exposed to the presidential campaigns. They're certainly more exposed to the advertising in from both candidates. I think they've seen them close up. And my sense is that when we look at polling from the swing states, it's pretty decisive at this point in Obama's favor. Nationally, if we look at the polling, the polls are actually quite close between Obama and Romney. But most of the country hasn't really seen the campaign. You know, we don't have a lot of advertising in New Jersey.
I don't think we're going to see a lot in New Jersey.
Right. But here in Washington, because
especially in Virginia.
Yeah,
I've been here just a few days. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're bombarded with the advertisements from both sides. So we're well, situated, I guess, to see the campaigns pretty much unfold, and the messages that the candidates are giving to voters. So I think that's why there's this very large discrepancy.
Right. But the president is not exempt from immunity in all of these polls. For example, a recent Bloomberg poll shows the president's losing his trust in matters of national security. Romney has an advantage in that margin by 48% to 42%.
Yeah.
What must the president do to reverse this trend, not only after the debates, but going into the election, for not only his sake, but for the good of the country?
Yeah, but I wouldn't rely on the one poll. I mean, we have a whole bunch of different polls on foreign policy. We have one out in the Washington Post today, for example, that shows that the president is, doing okay, doing better than Romney on most dimensions in their national poll. Obama has lost some points as a result of the recent Libyan situation, and that is bound to come up in the debates. I don't really think that there'll be a huge shift on foreign policy grounds, although we'll have a debate that will focus on foreign policy. But Obama's, the thing that's different this time on foreign policy is that generally, when you look at most polls, not just Bloomberg, what you see Obama basically doing better than Romney on most of those questions. And that's a big shift from most of our history, where during the Cold War period, as you know, when you were here and we talked about this, the Republicans had huge advantages on foreign policy questions that were questions that really drove the presidential race. And so I think that, what's unusual this time is that we have bin Laden, who's been killed. We have Obama taking a pretty aggressive stance against Al-Qaeda generally. And so I think that we have a public that's tired of the Afghan war. But the foreign policy questions aren't really driving the presidential election. And again, Obama seems to have a modest advantage when you look at a whole bunch of polls taken together.
Do you think that the national security issue is going to be one of those driving forces in the last 35 days?
No, I don't.
Because most people, when they say what's the most important issue to you, say economy, jobs, unemployment. Do you think that sort of trend could change in the last few days, or is it going to stick to that?
I think it's going to stick to that. Now, there's always the possibility that we have a catastrophe in Syria, for example. We have Iran building a nuclear weapon. But, I don't think that, even though we might have something that no one can foresee between now and November 6th, I think that the economy is still going to be a driving issue in the election.
I would tend to agree with you because I learned from you.
Thank you.
Now, you mentioned the Washington Post. Yesterday's front page
Yeah.
did a nice little expose on Romney. CNN did a similar one revealing Romney, and they did one to compliment to reveal the president a little bit. Now, one of the things they focus on, one of their main themes was refusing to reveal Romney's kind of humility, kind of reveal his accomplishments, sort of thing. You know, can his reluctance to do this be at least partially indicative as to why we don't see Governor Romney doing better in the polls with such a short time to go?
Well, I think there are a couple of things there. One is, his reluctance to talk about himself or his achievements. I think that's a problem, and it's very similar to George Bush the First. By the way, if you go back and you look at biographies about the first George Bush, his mother constantly said that the use of the word "I" was sort of verboten. You don't want we shouldn't.
It's Bush 41.
Yeah, I don't want my kids to brag. Basically, that's always a problem in politics. You have to make the sale. And one of the things that you look at with the debates is, did candidate so and so make the sale? And part of that is you have to tout your accomplishments without seemingly to be a braggart. I think that's part of the problem. But I think the other problem with Romney goes back to the Republican convention, because there was a very good film on Romney that was shown at the convention, but it was shown only on cable. When they got to prime time, it wasn't the fellow church members who were testifying to Romney's faith and his helping of other people. They were on at the convention, but they
part
were
of what you're referring to is kind of the parents who had lost their son and helping with the will.
Yeah.
Who's going to get the skateboard and that?
Yeah, but what was Romney doing? I mean, when it came to prime time, there was Clint Eastwood, and that what should have happened is that you had the testimony from the church members. You had this inspiring video, and then you would have Romney come out and build on that. And I think that's a problem. They're trying to show the video as much as possible at his campaign events. The problem, again, is that there's a much more limited audience now than there was at the convention.
So, what does he do to improve upon that? What can he do to make things right with 35 days to go?
I don't know.
Because today it was revealed through various sources that he's working on various zingers through the debate. Like he's already revealed
that's a hard thing to do, too, because the key is, and this is very similar to Reagan in 1984, because Reagan was likable, and Mondale's job was to try to make the case against Reagan without being disagreeable. That's Romney's job, is making the case against Obama, coming up with a zinger, but with a zinger that doesn't backfire on you or that looks to be overly harsh. Again, considering that Americans like the president, obviously what Romney has to do is acknowledge that likability and say, well, he's very likable, he's just not effective. I think that's going to be the thrust of his argument. It's very late in the game to turn around his personal unfavorability ratings, which are high in the swing states. And I think one of the things that's fascinating about that is, first, you don't have a lot of Romney advertisements directly from the Romney campaign in the swing states. There's some, but what you've got third-party organizations like American Crossroads that's also buying advertisement, basically attacking Obama and, touting Romney as the alternative. So that's been a problem. And the other problem, of course, is, his 47% comment. And that's being used devastating effect, in my judgment, by the Obama campaign and their advertising. And we're seeing that now in the last few days. You probably have seen that when you've been here.
Right. Now, both the candidates, on the Sunday shows and on the campaign trail have sort of downplayed their expectations in the build-up to the debate. Right. Now,
that's all a game.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, it's a game. But even Chuck Todd on Friday said 4 years ago, Obama didn't perform that well in the debate, in the primary debates versus Hillary Clinton, whereas Mitt Romney was rather exceptional. Could we see perhaps Mitt Romney do very well? Because most respondents in a Washington Times Zobby poll believed that the president would be the one to, quote-unquote, win the first debate. Only 26% will win.
Right.
I kind of struggle with this because...
I think there's something to the idea that Romney will do well.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, how well, and does it change the election dynamic?
Yeah.
And, again, those are two very different things. If you go back in debate history, you look at the first Reagan-Mondale debate. Mondale did quite well, and Reagan really faltered. He had a public that was predisposed to vote for Reagan, and Reagan had to come back in the second debate and basically reassure voters that they could trust him to continue on the job despite his age for a second term.
Right.
And, so in the end, I just wonder whether debate... I think Romney will do well in the debates. I think he did well in the Republican primary debates, by and large. But the question is, and we're in such a polarized period, do the debates really change things a whole heck of a lot? And I'm not sure about that.
We've seen people on television, like you said, this is all a game. People are talking about this sort of like it's a build up to like a football match or football game. It's more so than any other way. Is that sort of like a difference that we're talking about?
And that happens every 4 years. The only time the opposing campaign compliments the opponent is, when we get to the debates and they'll say, oh, he or she is the greatest debater since I'll be lucky just to get by, and, so right. That's a game that both sides play.
Right. Now the Governor Romney has branded himself sort of a Mr. Fix-It,
Right.
Thing Capital, the Olympics, you name it.
Right.
Now, a Rasmussen survey indicates that 51% trust the governor more on the economy rather than Obama at 44%.
Right.
Now, there had been some shifts. So for a short while, Obama was the one who was trusted more on the economy, but that was only amongst registered voters. This is amongst likely voters. Poll after poll we just mentioned earlier, jobs, the economy, unemployment are amongst the tops on the concerns when headed to the ballot box on November 6th. How can this be, we've kind of hammered on this, how can this be parlayed into public support for Romney?
Well, what Obama has done, and Romney has not countered this, because I think Romney has run a pretty ineffective campaign, in terms of staying on message and being on message. And he has been diverted, he's been all over the place. So I think that's been a real problem for him. I mean, look, if you go back and you look at the month of August, I think, when Obama signed an executive order, for example, saying, I'm not going to deport immigrants who had come to the United States at a very young age and, have lived most of their lives in the United States. Well, for day after day after day, then immigration became kind of a central topic of discussion. Now we've had the 47% thing out of Romney's fundraiser, and that's sort of been front and center and all over the blogosphere and on the news.
Do you think he can get past that, though? I mean, there's always...
I don't think he can get past it. Why? Because it's something that he said behind closed doors, and what Obama's doing very effectively is saying, well, you're saying one thing in private, and you're saying another thing in public. Undoubtedly, Romney will try to come back and say, well, 4 years ago, Mr. President, you talked about people clinging to guns and their religion. You've said some things behind closed door that mirror what you really think. This is he can say, well, in my case it's a distortion or it's taken out of context. He's trying to counter that in his own advertisements by talking directly to the camera and saying, I care about everybody. But again, he's had this problem getting this message through, which is a message that they wanted to get through even at the time of the Republican convention. Obama's been very consistent in terms of being on message, and the other thing that they've done effectively, in my view, is that they've said, look, this is not a referendum, it's a choice. So the question is Romney an acceptable alternative? And, they've basically done a pretty good job saying, well, no.
Well, we'll see what happens November 6th.
Exactly,
but
yeah.
Now, earlier we mentioned John Zogby.
Yeah,
now,
sure.
Now, when you're here on campus, and if anyone ever has you, one of the things that comes up is Dr. White's good friends with John Zogby.
True.
It never ceases to not be mentioned.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's true.
Yeah. Now, he stated last month during a forum at the Democratic National Convention that he has no idea who's going to win.
Right.
What do each of the candidates? We talked about Romney a little bit.
Right.
What does perhaps Obama need to do? We talked about a little bit what Romney needs to do. What are some of Obama's vulnerabilities in the last
his
few
biggest
weeks?
vulnerability is no question the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Look, no president has been reelected with greater than 7.8% unemployment. And of course, that was Reagan in '84. Now, unemployment during the first Reagan term had exceeded 10%. So it had come down pretty sharply. In fact, even if you go back and you look at, 1982 or thereabouts, Reagan was actually tied, slightly ahead, or losing to Mondale in potential election matchups, so based on the economy. People sensed that the economy was improving, even though unemployment was still high, was pretty pronounced. And that obviously gave Reagan a lift, but that's a high watermark. We have unemployment at 8.1, 8.2, but exceeding 8% for most of Obama's term. So, if Obama is reelected, I'll just underscore the if. I think if I were writing about the campaign, which I actually will be doing, my first sentence about the election would be, it wasn't supposed to end this way. Because no president has been reelected with that high degree of unemployment. And again, looking at the polling, when you look at, his job approval rating, which is generally in the high 40s, and it's been very consistent. So you look at that and you say, well, there you go. That shouldn't be. Why did this happen? I think one answer is, well, it happened because of Romney, as a candidate, and his flaws as a candidate, which we've talked about. And I think the other, I think there are some other aspects as well that play into this too, in terms of overall public perceptions of the Republican Party, which are also negative. And that was very true in 2010 when they took control of the House, because what was happening even then is that their unfavorable ratings were upside down. And what I mean by that is, more people viewed the Republican Party unfavorably than favorably. Now in 2010, the Democrats were also upside down, and they were viewed unfavorably.
So how did the Republicans regain control of the House if
Because,
both parties were viewed
the people
unfavorably?
voted for a party they didn't like, but they liked the Democrats even less.
I see.
And I think what happened is that the Republicans overreached and basically sort of misinterpreted the mandate. The mandate was basically to the president, slow down the health care. You're moving too fast. You're not listening to us. We are worried about the debt. But it wasn't to, it wasn't a mandate for obstruction. And I think that that's hurt the Republicans, no question. And then the whole debt ceiling debate hurt.
Don't you think in that regard it's both sides not talking to each other? It's not just Congress not cooperating with the president, it's the president not cooperating with the Congress?
Well, that's what the Republicans will say, and they may be right about it. What Obama's done pretty effectively is, I think, communicate to the public that I'll listen to anybody, I want to work with people, I want to bring people together. And his problem is that he has failed in doing that, and that failure is also a vulnerability for him. And he has to say to voters, why would the next 4 years be different than the last 4? And I think that will be a big challenge for him in the debates.
Now, just kind of, a couple last questions here, Dr.
Sure.
White. Now, we talked about the debate a little bit. Now, what in this first debate, come Wednesday, what do you expect to see?
I do expect to see two very good debaters, despite what they say. I think my expectation would be, I don't really think that the debates will be, as Governor Christie has said, the occasion where the election will be turned upside down, and we'll have a very different view. I think that we may tend to comment more on the aesthetics of the debate, who looked better, what mannerisms the candidates may have had.
Howard Dean said you can mute the television, you can get a feel of what the American people think.
Yeah, I think that may be true. I'm not going to mute my TV and watch the debate, but I think
that's a testament of some people. You got to really listen in and what the candidates are saying.
Yeah, and I think the public is going to be listening, but I'm not sure, if votes are going to be changed. My sense of it, particularly, as we're exposed to all these advertisements and whatnot in the swing states, is that there has been a kind of coming to judgment, and maybe the debates will ratify that judgment. I think the best that can happen for Romney is that the debates give people pause. And that's probably about the best that he can do at this point. And then have the two other debates that cause people to say, I need to think about this again. And then come to a different kind of judgment. I mean, there are some people that think this election is like 1980, where we had the debate between Carter and Reagan, and then, the Carter campaign collapsed, largely because of the economic situation the country was in. I don't think that comparison is quite apt, because we're so polarized now. Remember, Reagan got 1 in 4 Democrats to vote for him. That's not going to happen this time for either side. There aren't any Obama Republicans.
Charlie Crist.
Charlie Crist, who's now an independent.
Is now an independent, right, absolutely.
But Romney is on track to get about 93% of the Republican vote, which is what McCain got. Obama's on track to get about the same number, or 90% of self-identified Democrats. So, there just isn't that kind of crossover.
Right. Now, your friend and colleague, John Zogby, says he has no idea who's going to win the election. Now, cards on the table. Unlike him, do you have any sort of prediction who's going to win?
I think Obama's going to win. But it's not because I'm looking at national polls. I'm looking at the Electoral College.
Which is what you have to look at anyway.
Yeah, and he has too many ways to get to 270. For Romney, what has to happen, particularly what has to begin to happen in the debates, is that there's a breakout moment where the swing states move pretty decisively. And he has got to really do well in all of them. He's got to win Ohio. He's got to win Florida. Start with that. And I think the Romney campaign, if you go back and you look at it, at this point, they thought that they should be ahead decisively in North Carolina. They're not. That they should be decisively ahead in Indiana. They are. That they should be decisive, that they should be extremely competitive in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin. We don't see that. And, you know, the best judgment of that isn't to look at polls, is to look at where the ad money is going. And right now in Pennsylvania, he's not spending any advertising. So that's the key, is that you look over the next 30-odd days, where is Romney spending his money? In what states? And what states is he competitive or not competitive? And then you'll have a very good sense. But I think that they wanted to have some of these competitive states really locked up at the moment, and then move on to others so that they could have more pathways to 270. I think their pathways to 270 are still pretty narrow.
And you don't think with about 35, 40 days to go, it's going to change even after the debates? And
Yeah,
that?
no, I don't. You know, that's
Okay.
maybe where I disagree with my friend, John Zogby.
Well, Dr. White, it's always a pleasure. It's good to see you
Thanks.
again.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Anyone who's in high school and looking for a place to go to college, Catholic University, to study politics, even though we may disagree, and you may disagree, take this gentleman, learn from him, and absolutely, stay tuned to Save Jersey for so much more coverage. Doc, always a pleasure.
James, thanks.